All right, kids, we are moving on from radicals now, and we're actually going to go back to do quadratics. Quadratics is what we were working on before we left in the middle of March. And today I'm going to do a little bit of refresher. It's kind of a big lesson today, some refresher stuff from before, from a while ago, along with some new stuff as well. But the new stuff is minor. Remember, we were solving quadratic equations using zero product property. We were also doing square roots, and then we were doing quadratic formula. So we had all those ways of solving quadratic equations. Now the solutions to the equation, if you remember, we did mention this, they're also called the x-intercepts on the graph of the parabola. Okay, so x-intercepts and solutions, that means the same thing. All right. If you guys remember, we were talking about this. There's different options for solutions. You could have two solutions. Whoops. Not too sure what happened there. You could have two solutions, one solution, or zero solutions. Okay? Those are the options. Two is the most common. Okay? But those are the options of the solutions that you could have. All right? Now, down here, this is review stuff. Maybe you guys remember, here it says solve each of the following using the quadratic formula. If you remember, maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to do this yourself. But if you forgot, certainly watch me with the first one. We're asked to use quadratic formula. Remember, you want to be equal to 0. Here we already are. And we would write down A, B, and C. A here is 1, B is -2, and C is 6. Now remember, I'm going to write down the quadratic formula in general terms here. It was x equals opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And now we just plug these values in to that. So opposite b here would be 2. Again, this is stuff we did before break. I'm hoping that this rings a bell. B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. And then if you type in on your calculator what this comes out to, -2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6, that actually comes out to -20. And if you remember, we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So this problem ends up being no solution. Okay? And that's because what was inside of the square root ended up being negative. That gives us no solution. So that's when you have 0 solutions. Okay, here's another problem. It's already set equal to 0. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 1 as well. I'm going to plug in so this is going to be opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c. Now the stuff that's inside the square root here, this all what comes out to 0. So now the square root of 0 is 0. So we're going to do -2 plus 0 over 2, and then of course equals -1. And then we're going to do -2 minus 0 over 2. And that of course is going to equal -1 as well. So here we got just one answer. Now remember, why did we get no solution earlier? Because what was in the square root was negative. Here we got one answer. In this case, it turned out to be -1. The reason why we got no answer is because what was in the square root ended up being 0. So when you add 0 or subtract 0, it doesn't change this number in the front. You get the same thing. So when you have the square root of 0, you're just going to get one answer because adding or subtracting doesn't make a difference. And then this third problem, again, it's already set equal to 0, so we can write down our ABC. 1, -2, -a, x equals opposite b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So what's in the square root here ends up coming out to 36. Now, of course, the square root of 36 is 6. So we now have to do 2 plus 6 over 2, which would give us 4. And now we have to do 2 minus 6 over 2, which would give us -2. So there are our answers here. Here we got 2 answers. Why did we get 2 answers? Because we had the square root of a positive number. When you have the square root of a positive number, you're going to get 2 different answers because you have to add that to something and you also have to subtract it. And adding or subtracting a positive number is going to give you 2 different values. Okay, so those are the 3 different situations that we have. If what's in the square root's negative, that'll give you no solution because you can't take the square root of a negative number. If what's in the square root is a 0, you get just one answer. And if what's in the square root is positive, you get 2 answers. Okay? So this table is just what we were talking about. The thing that's in the square root, remember, what's in the square root? That's the b squared minus 4ac. That's called the discriminant. That's the thing in the square root of the quadratic formula. Okay? Now, if that discriminant is negative, how many solutions are you going to have? You're going to have no solutions at all because you can't take the square root of a negative number. If that discriminant is 0, you would have one solution. And if it's positive, you would have 2 solutions. Okay? So for example, on the previous page, that thing that was in the square root, the b squared minus 4ac, came out to -20. That was negative, no solution. Then in the second one, it was 0, one solution. And the third one's 36, positive, 2 solutions. So you're only going to have 0, 1, or 2 solutions. A lot of times with certain problems, we don't always need to know what the solutions are. We just need to know if there are any solutions or, how many solutions there would be. Okay? So here's a graph on the right-hand side. Now, we talked about this before too, so hopefully this is, refreshing some memories. This should really have arrows on the end because it really goes on forever. It says, refer to the graph of the right. Is the discriminant of this graph's equation positive, negative, or 0? How do you know? Try this yourself first. I'm hoping you can figure it out. Remember, the discriminant, tells you how many solutions there are or how many x-intercepts, you see? Okay, if you have a positive discriminant, you have 2 x-intercepts. Negative, you have 0, 0, you have 1. Now, how many x-intercepts do we have in this particular graph? I'm hoping that you are saying 2. There's one right there, and there's one right there. Okay? So, if we have 2 x-intercepts, that means that the discriminant in this for this graph would have to be positive. Why? Because there are 2 x-intercepts. That's why. Okay? So if let's just do a little supplemental thing here. If I had a graph like this, you would say that that discriminant would have to be negative because there's no solution there. That doesn't hit the x-axis at all. And then here in this problem here, you would say that this one is a discriminant of 0 because it just has one solution. It just nicks the x-axis right there. Okay. Now here, number 5, we're asked, it says, without graphing, how many x-intercepts, this will come back, how many x-intercepts does this equation have? You don't actually have to solve the whole thing. Now remember, x-intercepts, that means, the x-intercept means y is 0, so we change that out to 0. And that's good. We just write down our a, b, and c again, just like we did if we were solving. But now they're just asking us for the number of solutions. So all I have to do is b squared minus 4 times a times c. Okay. Now what does that come out to? That comes out to 36 minus 36, which is 0. Well, a discriminant of 0, that means that there is one solution. Look at the chart on the top or in the examples on the previous page. Okay? Discriminant of 0 gives you one solution. Here's the next one, number 6. The graph of y equals negative 2x squared plus 2x is shown at the right. Sorry, plus 2x minus 4. Find the solutions. Think before doing any work. Well, there's not really any work to do here, right? Does this graph cross the x-axis? No, it doesn't. It is no solution. So sometimes these can be pretty easy. How many solutions? Now remember, see, this one's asking, it's not asking us for the solutions. It's just asking how many solutions are there. So we change our y out to 0, and the number of solutions means just find the discriminant. A is 1, B is negative 6, C is negative 10. B squared minus 4 times A times C. Remember, a negative times a negative becomes positive, so you end up getting 76. That's a positive discriminant. That means that you would have, let me fix that a little bit. You would have 2 solutions because the discriminant's positive. All right. Sketch a graph. This is kind of like what I was doing on the previous page. You should try to do this on your own first. You just want to sketch a rough graph of the quadratic that has each of the following solutions. This one's going to have one solution, this one's going to have none, this one's going to have 2. So go ahead and pause this and try this on your own first. So one solution, I'm going to go ahead and do it now. One solution means your parabola just nicks the x-axis. That would be the solution right there. No solution means you have a parabola that doesn't cross the x-axis at all. And 2 solutions would be something like this. Remember, there's one, there's the other. Obviously, there's an infinite number that you could draw for all of these. Okay. Okay, here are some practice problems. You can do all of these on your own, really. Let's see here. Remember, to find the x-intercept, sorry, it's just asking to find the discriminant to determine the number of x-intercepts. You change the y to 0. Write down your ABC. That's 9. That's negative 30. That's 25. You want to do b squared. So negative 30 squared minus 4 times A times C. And if you punch this into your Inspire on your calculator, all this should come out to 0. And that means find the discriminant. That's the discriminant. And then how many x-intercepts are there going to be? If the discriminant is 0, there is one solution. Okay? I'm going to let you guys do this one yourself. You should get a discriminant of negative 12, which means there are 0 solutions. Now this one here I'll do, just because it looks a little bit different. Remember, just picture this as a 0. A is 7, B is negative 1. What's C? C is out here. C must be, yeah, it must be 0. So B squared minus 4 times A times C gives you 1 minus 0, which is just 1. We got a positive number. Okay, so that's our discriminant. And a positive number means 2 solutions, right? Okay, so sometimes your A, B, or C could be 0. Well, your B or C anyway. See this one here, look at this. This is not a typo. A here is 3 because A is the coefficient in front of the x squared. B is the coefficient in front of the x. There is none. That's because the B is 0. And then, I should say C. C is 15. So we would do B squared minus 4 times A times C. And this comes out to negative 180. That is the discriminant. And that means there are 0 solutions. I'm going to let you guys do this one yourself. You should get a discriminant of negative 80, which means there is no solution. This one here, you should get a discriminant of 32, which means there are 2 solutions. If you didn't get that, remember in this problem, A was 1, B was 0, C was negative 8. Okay? All right. Here, find the value of the discriminant, state the number. So that's just what we've been doing. A is going to picture the y as a 0. A is 2. B is negative 5. C is negative 4. So we want to do B squared minus 4AC. All right. So that's going to be negative 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 4. What does that come out to? 25. Negative times a negative is positive. That's 32. So that's going to give us 57. Remember, that's positive, so that means there are 2 solutions. So we should expect 2 solutions. Ah, this is something new. Well, it's not new, but we haven't done it here recently. What do you know about every y-intercept in the world? Every y-intercept means that the x value must be 0. So we just got to fill in this blank. But look, if I take this 0 and plug it in, this goes away, so does this. The only thing we have left is -4. In other words, if your equation is written in what I call standard form, well, what mathematicians call standard form, this number at the end, that plain number, that's your y-intercept. And lastly, we are asked to solve this. We actually have to, it says find the coordinates of the x-intercept. So remember, change out the y with 0. This would be a is 2, b is -5, c is -4. But you know what? I've already started it. See, opposite b is 5, plus or minus 2 times a, 2 times 2 is 4. But what goes in here? What number goes in here? We already figured this out. We figured this out in part A. Remember, what's in here is b squared minus 4ac. We figured that out in part A, and that came out to 57. So now on your calculator, you can do 5 plus square root of 57 over 4, and you will get 3.14. And then you can do 5 minus square root of 57 over 4, and you should get -0.64. Okay? So that was a little solving. So there's a lot of information there. And remember, live Zoom lesson is going to be on Thursday, April 16th at 1:30. We'll go over the same document step by step so you can ask questions along the way. Go nice and slow. Office hours are at 1 if you have questions from previous homework. See you later.